Okay, so this is the next part. Um, we said there are three things that we need to have a closed circulatory system. One is transport vessels. So we finished that in part one of these three parts. We did transport vessels, or blood vessels. Now we're going to talk about the transport medium, which is the second thing that's required. And in our case, transport medium is blood. So blood is a tissue, which basically means it's similarly shaped cells that carry out a similar function. So the cells work together in order to carry out a function. The major components of our blood includes plasma. And plasma is made up 90% water, but there's also other things floating in it. So blood proteins, glucose, vitamins, minerals, gases, wastes, hormones, anything that is floating around being carried in your blood would be considered part of the plasma, because the other component of your blood are the cellular components. So the other component, if it's not cellular, then it's considered dissolved in or part of the plasma. So cellular components include erythrocytes, which is another name for red blood cells, RBCs, which we call for short, and leukocytes, which are the white blood cells. Leuko means white, and cyte means cell. And the third part are the platelets. So hopefully this will show up okay. I'll show you this little video. And if it doesn't, you can always click on it on your own.
Xbox.
So that's just a little video clip just to give you an idea what they look like. Okay, so red blood cells are pretty obvious. They're the biconcave, so they kind of push inward on both sides of the discs. White blood cells, there's different types and different shapes, but these purple ones are kind of sticky, and they're the platelets. So they're not really purple in us, but just to make them stand out a little more, they give them some color in the diagrams and videos. Okay, so first component, blood plasma. The functions, basically, it's the fluid part and whatever is dissolved in it, with the exception of the cellular components. So, if you think about what the job would be, basically suspends and carries all the other things. So it suspends and carries the cellular components and the plasma proteins. It carries nutrients, hormones, minerals, enzymes, antibodies to destination tissues. So if you think of all those things, if you were to have your blood taken, all those things that they'd find in your blood, that's part of the role of the blood plasma, is to carry stuff around. Carries carbon dioxide and other waste to organs of excretion. So plasma proteins include three main types. The albumins, and their job is basically to cause osmotic pressure. Okay, they maintain blood volume and blood pressure by drawing water in when it's necessary. Globulins, you've probably heard the term immunoglobulins before. Basically, globulins act as antibodies. So we always have antibodies floating around, and they are proteins that help to recognize foreign things, invaders, when they come into our body, so we have a quicker response to get rid of them. And the third type are the fibrinogens. And fibrinogen is basically an inactive protein that's floating around waiting in case you have an injury, and they're involved in blood clot formation. Serum, I just included that term so you'd have an idea what the difference is between blood plasma and serum, because that was asked one year. Basically, serum is blood plasma from which the fibrinogens and other clotting agents have been removed. So in certain types of transfusions, they may need serum instead of blood plasma. Okay, so this is kind of a compare and contrast page, and it would be a really good way to study the different components of blood by doing compare and contrast. So if you look, the top line kind of talks about their main job. So for red blood cells, their main job is to carry oxygen to the body tissues. Okay, so carry oxygen to the body tissues. That's their main job. They have hemoglobin inside, and that's what hemoglobin will do. It'll bind the oxygen, and then the red blood cell will carry the oxygen around to the body tissues. White blood cells, their main job is to work together to fight against disease or infection. And blood platelets, their main job is it's not organized quite the same way, but basically their job is to help form blood clots. They have a sticky surface that helps form blood clots.
I was trying to tell you.
Nay. Sorry. My kids are here watching their shows and playing games and stuff too, so hopefully you don't hear it too much in the background. Okay. So, another feature to think about, to compare. Do they have a nucleus or not? Okay, so red blood cells and platelets don't have a nucleus, whereas white blood cells have a nucleus. So at some point in their production, red blood cells lose their nucleus. Okay, white blood cells always have a nucleus. In terms of how many there are, red blood cells are much more numerous. Remember, white blood cells are only really needed for whenever we're fighting disease or infection. Okay, so they're a lot less numerous. They will become more numerous in times of infection or disease. So that's why one of the things that they might look for in a blood test is the level of white blood cells that you have if you've been sick. Okay, another thing, red blood cells are incapable of independent movement. So basically they're kind of floating along in the current of the blood as it's being pushed from the actions of the heart. White blood cells, on the other hand, are capable of some independent movement. Okay, macrophages are a special type that they're kind of like Pac-Man almost, and they go and they're trying to catch the invaders. So they're capable of some independent movement. A simple one, red blood cells appear red. But why do they appear red? They appear red because they have hemoglobin. Okay, and the hemoglobin gives off a red color. It's a brighter red when there's oxygen bound. White blood cells don't have any hemoglobin, so they appear clear or white. Now, blood platelets are kind of unique. They're irregularly shaped. They are colorless. They have no nucleus, like we said, and their main job is to help form blood clots. They're really sticky. So basically they gather... Can you turn it down, please? Thank you. Sorry, guys. They gather at the site of a wound. They attempt to block the blood flow. And then calcium and vitamin K and fibrinogen are other players that will help to form the clot. And we're going to look at that a little bit closer, too. Okay, so you should have these questions on one of your slides. Turn. Okay. The first question says, which ones in the table are red blood cells? So it's basically to get you to recognize the terms. Okay, so here, we can move to this. Okay, so the only ones in that table that are red blood cells are the erythrocytes. All the rest of these, with the exception of platelets, all the rest of these are white blood cells. So you can list them. There's neutrophils, eosinophils, basophils, monocytes, and B and T lymphocytes. Okay, so basically there's lots of different white blood cells. We're not going to get into as much all the specifics and what each type does. These ones have different types of granules in them, which you'll learn about if you take biology after high school. Okay. Second question says, what are the two most important disease-fighting white blood cell types, and what are their functions? So I didn't put the types here, But the ones that engulf and destroy pathogens are the macrophages. Okay? Macro, M-A-C-R-O, phages, P-H-A-G-E-S, macrophages. So they're one of the most important types, and their job is to act kind of like Pac-Man, and they go after and engulf and destroy pathogens that have come into your body. Second type are the lymphocytes, and one of their jobs is to produce antibodies to elicit or bring about an immune response to a given antigen. Okay, so I'm going to show you this little video, and it's really quick. It's just showing a white blood cell chasing after an invader. Okay, so these are bacteria, and this is a macrophage. It's chasing after the bacteria. I apologize for these advertisements. I have a virus on my computer. Okay, so they are capable of some independent movement. There, we got them. And then the lysosomes inside will help to break it down and destroy it. Okay, the next question, where are the following cellular components produced? In other words, where is their origin? The red blood cells are produced in bone marrow, as are the platelets. So our bone marrow is really important for production of our cellular components of our blood. Okay, the granulocytes, so the white blood cells that have granules in them, so that'd be the neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils. They're produced in the bone marrow as well, but the agranulocytes, or the lymphocytes in other words, are produced in the bone marrow, but also in the spleen and the lymph nodes, which are another part of your immune system. Okay. Okay, I think this is the... Okay. This diagram you do have, it's on your sheet, the handout that has your case studies on it. Okay. So you should be able to, you may be possibly asked to do a little sketch and explain how blood clots are formed. So, simply said, if you have damage to a blood vessel, so you have a cut or something, and you have damage to your blood vessel, okay, then platelets are going to come, and they're always floating around your blood, and they're sticky, so they come to the site of the cut, and they form a plug. So they basically keep you from losing your blood because they form a plug. But they're not going to last on their own for a long time. But because they're kind of squished together, it causes them to release chemicals that cause a cascade of reactions. Okay? So a cascade of reactions just means one reaction causes another reaction, which causes another reaction. So a whole bunch of reactions are triggered by the platelets and factors in your blood together. The last one of which causes prothrombin. So prothrombin is an inactive protein that's kind of floating around in your blood. It's an inactive enzyme, and it activates it to become thrombin. And then thrombin catalyzes, or is there to help, fibrinogen, which we talked about earlier. It's one of the main types of plasma proteins. It's floating around in your blood. It causes it to become active. So when you see that ending ogen, O-G-E-N, it means inactive. And when you get rid of it, that means that has kind of folded a certain way or has been caused to become an active form. Okay, so it activates fibrinogen to fibrin, and fibrin forms these little threads, kind of make like a net, and that net of mesh traps red blood cells and other things to form the clot. Okay, so that is how the blood clot forms. In the process, in those, what triggers those enzymatic reactions, calcium was required. Calcium was released and was required for certain steps to happen. So calcium, you're going to find as we go through different chapters, calcium has a lot more roles than just helping to build your bones and your teeth. It helps with your nervous system, it helps with blood clot formation, it helps with a lot of stuff. So it's really important. Okay, here's another video on blood clot formation.
Oh, he almost hit me. He was like, fly. Hey, it's my coin. You took it. Almost over. You can't build with your bean hulk, but you can build with your like with your we already know how to do it. Remember, I'm the distraction.
I always knew there was a little buzz around your name, Tony. But this is taking things a little too far. We've got to shut off the power. Pepper always says I get my own way. Spiders. What is it? Should be a little small.
I still need to be distracted after you break that.
Okay, so that's a little more detailed than what we need, but at least it gives you kind of a more of a visual so you can see and understand what happens in formation of blood clot.
I want to build things. Fine.
Okay, I think I'm going to do this one separately. So, I'll stop there for now.